I think we're live. Hang on.
Okay,
Wait, can you check your phone and see if we're live? I think we're live. Jeez. Quality. No.
Yeah.
Yay! Please stop. Please stop.
Is it live? Or it's a little bit delayed. Because you just turned on the lights here.
Okay.
I mean,
Alrighty then.
are you good?
I don't care.
I mean, we're. If anyone's watching, hello.
Hi!
Hi.
Old Books Podcast.
Oh, that's probably me.
This wasn't by accident. We're doing this on
Toby.
purpose.
Toby. Shut up. We're here doing Juneteenth stuff. I hope the audio is okay.
I'm sorry.
Man,
My badge.
man.
No pun
You know what? It's 8 o'clock. It's your season time.
It's past 8. We late.
Late.
We're running on CPT time tonight. So we're doing Juneteenth. We're here, Esteban and Dennis, you know. Sam and Tony from Hermitandhomie podcast, marriage podcast. Really dope. You should check out their shit.
No, we officially decided on the hermit. She's the one.
Oh,
Wait, I
I'm
thought
not hermit. It changes, but lately it's in the hermit.
With quarantine, I'm 100%, 120% hermit.
Right.
Okay.
I want to get out of my robe. I'm like, no, I'll live with this.
And I'm the homie that's like FaceTime me with my mom every day. I think I'm getting on her nerves. I won't admit it to her directly.
she won't admit that she likes it.
Right?
You're right. Exactly.
I hope she calls.
As you can see, much like our podcast, we will go on tangents.
Yes.
Turn off the
Those are the
AC.
best.
I guess we fit right in.
Right? You do the same thing.
There is a topic, but why would we talk about that?
So
And we
today,
have Toby and Ahsoka
On live.
on live.
Wow.
He's been waiting for this moment. Yeah.
Toby, could you not, please?
Audition is another time, Joe.
No. No.
come here, buddy.
No.
Alright.
Alright.
So,
Oh, man.
today we're actually going to be doing some reading and then discussing what we're reading around topics around Juneteenth. You know, authors, poetry. I'll be actually reading
Philosophy.
a little bit of history for those of us who tuned in. No. Toby will be giving us guff. So I guess I'll start. The reading that I'll be doing is going to be a little bit from an autobiography by a gentleman of Benjamin Oliver Davis Jr.
Who was Benjamin Oliver Davis Jr.?
Oh,
Thank you for asking, Dennis. Now, he is actually the gentleman who was the commander of the 99th, let me say this correctly, Flight Group, Fighter Squadron, and the 332nd Fight Group during World War II.
Are they known for anything, Esteban?
They're actually well known. Well,
so cheesy.
I'm here for it. I'm like this, like.
well, that's actually the sad part. They aren't well known. They should be well known.
Mm-hmm.
You may know them by their nickname, the Tuskegee Airmen.
Oh,
But these were the African Americans that participated, that gave it their all during World War II. Now, to give you a little bit of reference of how good they were, these squadrons flew over 200 missions and only lost 25 bombers.
You should look at them.
25. The average flight group lost over 46. Now, the reason I give you those numbers is just to give you that reference of, for the entire history of America, African Americans have been wanting to participate. They love the idea of this country. And when they're allowed to, they excel. Now, this gentleman actually did an autobiography to talk about his time to become a general, to become a commander, to be a black man in America. I'm going to read some things from it. The first excerpt that I'm going to read is from a paragraph that he calls The Invisible Man. Except for tutoring some of my underclassmen from after my year, I had no conversations with other cadets. The situation was ridiculous. but in no way was it funny. To this day, I cannot understand how officials at West Point and individual cadets, with their continual and vociferous state the belief of duty, honor, country as a way of life, could rationalize their treatment of me. And that's kind of a point of what we're making now. There's a lot of individuals out there who will tell you about how great America is, how great the Constitution is, but they don't show it in their treatment of minorities, of the African American, of Hispanics, of any kind of minority that isn't white.
Simply put, other Americans.
Folks who ain't white.
The second section is, again, from his time at West Point. Now, this is a conversation that many of us may get triggered when hearing it because we've probably heard something similar. Shortly after I arrived at West Point, the commandant of cadets told me, in what he obviously considered to be an act of kindness, officially, I was to be treated like a white man. Of course, I was thoroughly disgusted by this condescending attitude. One of the things we try to get everyone to understand, I don't want you to treat me like a white man. I want you to treat me like a man, like a person. We are all human beings. This simple statement, when you look at us and tell us, oh, I'm going to treat you like a white guy, that's not what we're trying to get you to understand. You aren't better because you're white. We are all humans. I want you to treat me like a human.
I don't see color as another way.
Yes, another way.
It's like, I want you to acknowledge that we're not exactly the same, but I want you to treat me as if we were all human.
Right.
As we are.
Exactly.
Rest.
Wait, did I fuck up? Was I supposed to change this thing? Probably.
It's fine.
What, which one are you doing now?
Well, now I'm going to read the last one, the one that starts with my father.
Okay. Go ahead, you can do it.
So this last one, it's going to be him talking about his father. Now, for those who don't know who his father was, Benjamin Oliver Davis Sr., he was the first African-American general in the U.S. Army. And he did this while starting as an enlisted man. Now, as anyone who's in the military knows, going through the officer ranks is difficult enough. But going from being enlisted all the way to general while being an African-American starting in the 1920s is mind-boggling. And it took this man's full dedication, full tenacity to get through, to fight through, just to get there. And that's why his son would come to become the great man that he was. But here's something that struck me when I was reading it. My father was studying French, and both he and my mother, Sadie, loved the freedom and the warmth with which the French people had always received them. In Europe, they moved about without restriction and encountered no discrimination of any kind. It seemed ridiculous and totally unnecessary that, for non-whites, life outside the United States could be equal and free to all, while home was so frequently painful.
Damn.
It's one of those things where his father, again, man who made it to be a general, had to leave the country he was serving, had to leave the place where he pushed to do his duty.
To strive to be the best.
To be the best. He had to leave it, leave these grounds, so he could be treated like a human being. His sacrifice, his honor, all he did for the nation didn't matter to those in charge because he was black.
Damn. That's very good.
Thank you, for one. And I just wanted to say that if you read James Baldwin, he had a similar experience.
Yeah.
And if you read any of his work, saying that he had to leave the United States to be respected as an author, to be respected as a man in a different country. And he's like, it was so strange for him, and this is me paraphrasing, that anywhere else, he was given respect just for the effort he was trying to put in explaining his situation in his home, and abroad, he got more respect and more, accolades and more treatment, better treatment than he would at home. At home, he was a boy, literally, like not in the sense that he was physically a boy, but nobody would even refer to him as a man.
Briefcase.
Yeah.
Briefcase man.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I went out of my way to find like writings by these particular gentlemen, because actually several of the Tuskegee Airmen have autobiographies. Some have actually just had ghostwriters write it for them. But I love history. I love museums. I love all these things. But when we look at the American school system, they teach you American history. But they leave out, except for a month, African Americans. But if you actually dive into American history, there has not been a war fought for this country, for this Constitution that a lot of them out there like to talk about, where an African American wasn't front and center giving his all. So why can this community fight so much for this country, but the country will not fight for them?
It kind of reminds me of the Harlem Hellfighters, where I think they were in Germany, and I think it was like a small squad of 25. They had no backup, but they were, I think, being assaulted by 200 Germans, and they defended themselves, and they got more accolades from the French than they did from our own people, from Americans.
Damn, that's a good speech.
Hey.
Hey.
Wait, I was gonna say, are we gonna?
Is that a thing? What does this mean?
I'm not good at that, so I'm
It's like
Isn't that like poetry slam? Like
it's like the non-violent clap.
Really?
I don't know if it's officially a thing.
Yeah.
Wanna go next one?
Who's up next?
Nominations.
Me?
Okay.
I'll go because what I actually have kind of piggybacks off of what he was saying anyway.
Yeah.
I
I will start the process of. You resent those?
I did actually. I can start.
Yeah. I'm just gonna try to figure out how to get it up.
So this is a speech.
This is a story all about how. Sorry.
Say about Mary McLeod Bethune.
I didn't see. Actually, it looks like. Oh, Wi-Fi. That could be why this thing is so slow. Anyway, go ahead. I'll figure it out.
So this is a speech by Mary McLeod Bethune. I hope I'm saying that correctly.
This one's a yes.
I don't know why my screen keeps timing out with this case, so I'm just going to take that. Okay. Born in 1875, died 1955. And this speech is called, What Does American Democracy Mean to Me? I just wanted to be noted that this was written this speech was given November 23rd in 1939. The daughter of former slaves, Mary McLeod Bethune was educated at the, I always forget how to say that, Scotia Seminary in Concord, North Carolina, and the Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, Illinois. After marrying Albertus L. Bethune in 1898, Mary moved to Daytona Beach in Florida, where she later founded the Daytona Normal and Industrial Institute for Negro Girls, which is now known as Bethune-Cookman College. Yep. The energetic leader of numerous organizations, Mary McLeod Bethune was eventually named by Franklin D. Roosevelt as the director of the Office of Minority Affairs in the National Youth Administration in 1935. The following speech by Bethune was part of a panel discussion on NBC Radio, where the panelists were asked to speak about what American democracy meant to them. Democracy is, for me, and for 12 million Black Americans, a goal towards which our nation is marching. It is a dream and an ideal in whose ultimate realization we have a deep and abiding faith. For me, it is based on Christianity, in which we confidently entrust our destiny as a people. Under God's guidance in this great democracy, we are rising out of the darkness of slavery into the light of freedom. Here, my race has been afforded the opportunity to advance from a people 80% illiterate to a people 80% literate, from adjunct poverty to the ownership and operation of 1 million farms and 750 homes, from total disfranchisement to participation in government, from the status of chattels to recognized contributors to the American culture. As we have been extended a measure of democracy, we have brought to the nation rich gifts. We have helped to build America with our labor, strengthened it with faith, and enriched it with our song. We have given you Paul Laurence Dunbar, Booker T. Washington, Marian Anderson, and George Washington Carver. But even these are only the first fruits of a rich harvest, which will be reaped when new and wider fields are open to us. The democratic doors of equal opportunity have not been opened wide to Negroes. In the Deep South, Negro youth is offered only 1/15 of the educational opportunity of the average American child. The great masses of Negro workers are depressed and unprotected in the lowest levels of agriculture and domestic service, while the black workers in industry are barred from certain unions and generally assigned to the more laborious and poorly paid work. Their housing and living conditions are sordid and unhealthy. They live too often in terror of the lynch mob, are deprived too often of the constitutional right of suffrage, and are humiliated too often by the denial of civil liberties. We do not believe that justice and common decency will allow these conditions to continue. Our faith envisions a fundamental change as mutual respect and understanding between our races come in the path of spiritual awakening. Certainly, there have been times when we have delayed this mutual understanding by being slow to assume a fuller share of our national responsibility because of the denial of full equality. And yet, we have always been loyal when the ideals of American democracy have been attacked. We have given our blood in its defense, from Crispus Attucks on Boston Commons to the battlefields of France. We have fought for the democratic principles of equality under the law, equality of opportunity, equality at the ballot box, for the guarantees of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We have fought to preserve one nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Yes, we have fought for America with all her imperfections, not so much for what she is, but for what we know she can be. A little bit.
Take your time.
Perhaps the greatest battle is before us, the fight for a new America, fearless, free, united, morally rearmed, in which 12 million Negroes, shoulder to shoulder, with their fellow Americans, will strive that this nation under God will have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, for the people, and by the people, shall not perish from this earth. This dream, this idea, this aspiration, this is what American democracy means to me.
Let's go.
Thank you so
Really
much.
great.
You can't tell if that's from the 40s or if that's from yesterday.
Yeah, that could have been written yesterday.
That's why it stuck out to me, because the speech was said at November 23rd,
Of what year?
1939.
That's crazy. Hey, quiet.
He's like, Johnny Hump.
Sorry, that was intense.
No,
No, that was really good.
It's hard. It's
you
tricky.
open
You don't want this
for,
past? You don't want this past right here?
Sounds like you.
since Sam was pretty enough to read hers, I'll read next. And if anybody does, unless anybody else does.
Oh wait, I have your stuff, Dennis. Hang
I'll
on.
watch you.
Let me get that shit up.
Spin that shit.
Wicka, wicka, wicka.
While the DJ brings up my track.
Hell yeah.
I just want to say I recently saw a post of reading Maya Angelou, who read Paul Lawrence Dunbar, one of the excellent African Americans. Sam was just speaking about in her speech from Mary McLeod Bethune, who was a writer around this time, and she was reading a poem that he entitled "We Wear the Mask." And I have no expectation of doing it as well as she did. She was an awesome author, an awesome actress. And I remember reading, she had so many jobs. She was like a fry cook and all kinds of stuff. And she's an amazing woman, phenomenal woman. And I want to pay tribute to her as well as Paul Lawrence Dunbar for this particular poem, which hit me kind of hard. It's called "We Wear the Mask." Paul Lawrence Dunbar. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding hearts we smile. And month with myriad subtitles. Subtleties, excuse me, I'm sorry. Why should the world be overwise in countering all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them all only see us while we wear the mask. We smile, but, oh great Christ, our cries. Excuse me, I'll let the motorcycle go by for a second. To these tortured souls arise. We sing, but oh, the clay is vile. Beneath our feet, long the mile. But the world dream otherwise. We wear the mask. So, I felt this personally because, and not to make fun of this particular subject, but like when you work retail and things like that, a lot of times you have to deal with people who aren't very kind. And not only are you just as a person trying to keep their job, having to smile, or being told by a manager, smile, smile, smile. And it's like, I just got off the bus from, like on a 2-hour bus ride or 2-hour train ride to get here to make decent money, and not really decent, but better than I would get somewhere else. To listen to this person who didn't know what they want tell me that I'm not doing my job well, when I'm doing it to my best of my ability and to the best of, the resources provided to me. And so a lot of times you deal with, especially I've worked in food service and things like that as well, and you deal with people who just have no idea how hard you're working to be a good person and a good servant to them. So, and that's just my little small part of it today. I have enormous freedoms, I have enormous, privilege that I am glad for. And I couldn't imagine being in a time where Jim Crow was rampant and allowed and and just didn't have to hide itself at all. And having to be a black person working if there was a minimum wage that black people could have. Not sharing the same bathrooms, not having the same resources as a person because of your skin color. Right. And you're doing your best and you're working your hardest and having to go home with that every morning and have to come back out.
That's trauma.
And just the trauma of living with that. And it's like, I understand the mask at my point. I don't understand what my grandmother or her mother would have to do to wear that mask every day. So I thank Maya Angelou and I thank Paul Lawrence Dunbar for speaking the words that I don't have to say to an experience we all felt at some level.
And we worked in food service too, and there were just some nasty people in the world. And you can have like the biggest smile on your face, trying to do everything you can, but you can. Yeah,
we can really go into it, but I'm not going to right now.
You can only give so much blood for this person, and you still get written up, or you get a shitstorm behind that. It's like, fuck it. Fuck me. I guess I'll go fuck myself.
I've definitely encountered that.
The ham bone. After
ham bone?
I'll tell you the ham bone.
I'll tell you the magic finger story.
Please
do. That's a great story.
So when we swap
have stories for during dinner because we're serving dinner.
Some of us have to work in jobs like this later, so we're not going to do this live.
Abby, do you want to go next?
Yeah, actually I will, just because the excerpt I picked has a really nice tie-in.
Oh.
But first, let me do this
That's
thing.
what somehow we didn't even plan what we were reading with
Right.
each other.
Yeah, no, we didn't.
But
This
somehow
wasn't
it
premeditated.
just flows perfectly.
Um,
That's awesome.
So I'm reading two different excerpts. One of them is called "The New Negro," and it's by Elaine Locke. I don't actually know when this is written. I can look it up real quick though, because it's old. I chose to go a little bit more theoretical, a little more philosophical with my stuff.
I think my iPad is quite comfy for Toby.
It's like it's warm.
So let me just take a
Or
look
cool.
real quick.
No.
The New Negro. Elaine Locke. 1925.
Whoa.
Okay. In the last decade, something beyond the watch and guard of statistics has happened in the life of the American Negro and the three Norns who have traditionally presided over the Negro problem have a changeling in their laps. The sociologist, the philanthropist, the race leader are not unaware of the new Negro, but they are at a loss to account for him. He simply cannot be swathed in their formulae. For the younger generation is vibrant with new psychology, the new spirit is awake in the masses, and under the very eyes of the professional observers is transforming what has been a perennial problem into the progressive phases of a contemporary Negro life. Could such metamorphosis have taken place so suddenly as it appeared to? No. The answer is no. Not because the new Negro is not here, but because the old Negro had long become more of a myth than a man. The old Negro, we must remember, was a creature of moral debate and historical controversy. He has been a stock figure perpetuated in a historical fiction, partly to innocent sentimentalism, partly in deliberate reactionism. The Negro himself has contributed his share to this thought of a sort of protective society mimicry forced upon him by the adverse circumstances of dependence. For generations of the mind of America, the Negro has been more of a formula than a human being, a something to be argued about, condemned or defended, to be kept down or in his place or helped up, to be worried with or worried over, harassed, patronized, a social bigotry or a social burden. The thinking Negro even has been introduced to share the same general attitude, to force his attention on controversial issues, to see himself in the distorted perspective of a social problem. His shadow, so to speak, has been more real to him than his personality. Through having to appeal from the unjust stereotypes of his oppressors and the traducers to those of his liberators, friends, and benefactors, he has had to subscribe to the traditional position from which his case has been viewed. Little true social or self-understanding has or could come from such a situation. Which is basically, my interpretation is, it's interesting because there's the duality between the history of America, the things that we've done that are not so good, and as Americans, like the whole like slavitude and all of that stuff, and the capacity to objectify that and look at it as like as a dilemma, a problem, a lapse of time, but not to identify that as that pain belonging to a people, and not recognizing that it's not just like, oh, look at this bad thing we did, and taking it from the thought of like, 400 million people die in a tsunami. The number is just so big, most people can't wrap their head around it. It becomes unreal. To, Ariana died yesterday of an earthquake, something like that. It's when it hits home. Yeah, it's a bunch of people a long time ago who experienced some trauma, and what y'all complaining about. And that's kind of the duality that I think people are starting to wake up to, is like the things that we learn in high school or through college, the things that we hear about, when we see situations where Black people are upset about some injustice, a lot of people are quick to be like, why are they mad? I'm not the person who put them in chains. They're not the people in chains. Why are they so mad? Because they're not understanding that there's never been a healing process. There's never been a proper addressal of this to realize that it's people. So that was one part.
I don't mean to interrupt, but
You interrupted me. Go for it.
just rude. No, I just wanted to add to your point that I think in those situations where people are like, it wasn't me, I didn't do that. And it's like, well, you're adding yourself to the number now by being a person who wouldn't care
Right.
to look into the problems, not someone else's problems of their own making, but problems that they now benefit from. You have to understand that our country, the wealth it was built on, the things that it now benefits from, were built on the sacrifices, the struggles, and the work of other people. We understand that as people of color. We're told that all the time.
It's like addressing a pattern.
Yes.
Because a lot of those issues still haven't been fixed.
Exactly. Not only in the negative sense, and I don't really know if that negative is the right word, but just in the sense of like even growing up in my household, I understood that I'm able to do a thing. My parents grew up in a certain way, and had limited resources.
Mm-hmm.
They took their limited resources, did the best they could with it, made a family, of which I'm part of, and because they did what they did, just in the one generation, I was able to excel in ways they had. Mm-hmm. I had resources they don't have. Mm-hmm. I've been places they haven't been. That's my heritage. That's my benefit. That's the thing I remember every day. That the person I am is a ladder. I'm at the top of the ladder. Someone else put together. Someone else had to struggle for the wood to put to put this ladder together that I can climb easily. And other people might look at my situation, whatever it might be, and say that must be difficult for you. And I would say yes, but I also know I also have the sugar on it that says, well, it might look hard. It might be hard, but
It's not as hard as.
the last ladder was on fire. It's like
Yeah.
Oh, that's deep. I like that.
mine. It's raining in mine, but it's a waterproof ladder.
Right.
I'm good. And my ladder's not on fire. I can climb with ease. Like I got time. I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember that every time I hear something like that, or I see my mom come home from work, or my dad, just retired not too long ago. He's able to do things that he wasn't able to. It's like I'm thankful for that, and so I try to show that in my actions. I try to remember, remind people that, younger cousins and things like that, we're doing better than our parents, than our grandparents. That's
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to E the other day. This like random thing just kind of occurred to me. I'm actually a first generation. My mom was born in Cuba and came here when she was 2 or 3 during the whole situation with like the Fidel Castro thing. My grandmother and my mother were among thousands of people that fled to America to get out of the situation. So I was like, shit, I'm actually like a first generation, and I wouldn't think about that, but that's cool. And I mean, I don't know how long my father's line of the family has been here. My dad was born in the Bronx, so I know that I'm not first generation there. But it's just like, it's really crazy when you think about like all the crazy things. Like I grew up hearing stories about how my grandmother would basically have these soup kitchens, and she would make food for Cuban refugees that would just come in and landing, and she would like make big dishes, and you could come and get what you could and get something to eat. And that's how my mom learned to cook, was by watching that, and then I got it from her. So yeah. Without further ado, I will read the next part, which is shorter and easier to digest. This is Howard Thurman. Don't know when, but it's old. A social order in which even the weakest may find refuge and refreshment. If men are to find a way of life that is worth living and make it an act of faith toward themselves and their fellow men, then it follows that they must work for a society in which the smoking flax will not be quenched, nor the bruised reed crushed. Long ago, it was Eugene Debs who said, while there is a lower class, I am in it. While there is a criminal element, I am of it. While there is a man in jail, I am not free. For better or for worse, we are tied together in this world. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. The present global war is a tragic illusion of the modern version of this truth.
Whoa. Yo, that was.
That's just not old. It's like, we're
Damn.
still here though.
Yeah.
It hasn't moved.
Nobody in this room can't say that someone else's bad behavior wasn't tied to them because you share a certain amount of melanin.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's like, Dennis, why? Like, I've actually been in jobs. Like, I worked at a McDonald's once, and one of the customers who happened to be black was acting up. And as soon as they got a chance, it was like, Dennis, why they like that? And I'm like,
Oh, nah. Oh,
they would like that.
It's not
They would like
funny.
that. Because
Yeah.
I know it's not funny, but it is kind of funny.
no. Now,
like,
later.
like now that I'm away from it, far away from it, it's funny because it's like, in the moment, I was furious. And it was like, I couldn't even explain to someone how horrible that makes you feel.
Mhm.
That even in a moment, when I'm in the same uniform as you, I'm getting the same bad treatment you're getting, I'm still part of the problem, even though I'm on your side of the counter, literally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they like that, Dennis?
What do you mean they?
It's like
Who's
the
they?
people who are the same color as the fries that we throw away.
So all of us laughing when you made that comment just
Yeah.
made me think of something recently we just watched with Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
Oh, is that the 8 minutes and
46 seconds?
I haven't
Well,
seen that yet.
well, we saw that one, but
That
it
was
was
good.
it was another one he did where he's commenting on he was somewhere down south and he went to go eat, and he's like, sometimes things are so racist that you just gotta laugh. He's like, it's one of those things where you're just like, yo, that is racist, but you're just laughing because what else can you do?
Yep. You have to laugh to keep from crying.
Like, what else can you do?
Or raging out of control.
Right. He went on with the joke, but
Yeah.
that's just what hit me. I'm like, yeah, we're all at,
Yeah.
we all do it. It's like, god damn.
Why do they like that?
Yo.
Truth be told, black joy is resilience.
True. Dennis's story kind of reminded me of the restaurant. Remember when I had that brother talking to me?
I had a feeling you were gonna
Should
tell
I
that
mention
story.
that, or-
I would.
So this is when
Please do.
we were working at a restaurant. That I was almost about to say the name, but
I'm
when
sure
I-
everyone has like a race story
Yeah.
at some point.
so
How did you not?
this was like 11:30 at night, weekday. I'm like, I can't have the table. I'm like, I just want to go home. So I see the table. It's a dude, their infant baby, in the the little carriage on the seat, and his woman. So I approach the table. I'm like, hey guys, my name is Anthony. What can I get for you? So he goes, yo, no, my man, talk nigga to me. And I'm like, excuse me? He goes, nah, you don't gotta talk to me all that fancy shit, son. Just talk to me like my nigga. You my nigga. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, your baby's there. You want? She just put her head down. She's like, I said, I can't help you, but I'll try to find someone who could do that for you. That's when I got Carlos, the server.
Why is Carlos?
I always gotta be Carlos.
I'm probably laughing at the wrong part of it, but I get it.
Well, like, I pull up and I'm giving courtesy. I'm doing my job.
Mhm.
How can I help you? He's like, talk nigga to me. I'm like, bro,
Just
But,
really?
but that's the thing. Like he sees you. He identifies himself. He sees himself in you as
Yeah.
someone of color.
Yeah.
You're immediately like akin to him, and he thinks you're wearing the mask. He
Yeah,
thinks that
yeah.
you're being
yes.
white, and so he's like, you don't gotta be here. You
Yeah,
don't know how to
exactly.
do that.
You don't gotta do that for
You
me,
could
bro.
be yourself,
Yeah.
assuming that yourself is like he is.
Yeah, that's how I was like, like he was a brother, so I'm trying to give him like the benefit of the doubt. But I'm like, really, like it's 11:30 at night. Calm down, actually.
yeah.
You know what that reminds me of? The scene from Airplane, the old movie?
Yeah.
Where the old lady starts cracking jive. She's like, I got this.
I speak jive, yeah.
He wanted you to talk jive.
Yeah,
Yo, she's gone.
We're okay. We're
For
live.
the
We're
youngins,
together.
If you
I think
haven't
she-
seen Airplane, you should watch
Yeah,
it.
I think she's broken now.
Oh,
Really?
And now, of course, I immediately jump to Barack's anger translator.
Oh, Hell, that's one and I have our own story
Are you
about
serious?
camping.
Oh my
Yes,
God!
okay.
Oh
Yeah.
God!
So we're on our way to Pennsylvania to go camping. I guess it's glamping because we were going into a cabin.
Yeah.
But we were stopped by the police when we got closer to the cabin.
Oh.
And it wasn't a problem. But our friend Alberto put on his mask and his best interview voice and
Well,
made sure he did everything he was supposed to.
but you gotta set the scene.
Oh,
So-
you tell it better.
So we went out there in 2 cars. One car, we don't know how this happened, but one car,
We know.
3 of our friends, all 3 of them are very light skinned.
Yeah.
Now here's the thing. None of them are actually white. They're just light skinned.
Yes.
The second car, me, Dennis, and Alberto,
We're all
you know,
about the
we
same
look like we have a permanent tan.
Exactly.
Your melanin's not going
Yes.
Right.
Yes. A lot of cocoa butter in the second car.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're driving, music is going, we need gas. We pull in to get gas. Now the car with the lighter skin folks is on the outside street. We see the cop coming. It'd be very easy for him just to pull up to that car and ask them where they're going. This guy does a complete circle of the gas station to pull up to our car. Both cars have New York plates. Both are in the middle of the night. Yes, it's 2 a.m. But again, could have pulled up to either car. Chose ours. Now that's when Alberto turns down the music all the way. He immediately has his license, registration, and because we were, unfortunately, in times where we didn't have, all the fancy technologies, the map directions. You remember those?
Stop dating yourself.
So he had all of this ready. He rolls down the window, and Alberto's a cool dude, but the first thing I'll tell you, he likes talking slang. So I never in my mind imagined he doesn't speak in slang. But the first words I heard, and I was sitting next to him, and my head
I
kind
was
of
ready to say, did you break
jerked.
your neck?
Because the first thing I hear was, "Well, good evening, officer. We're actually heading to a cabin. We seem to be lost." He's handing things high to this. And I'm
What
just
you
like,
didn't see was that he grabbed his mask while he was grabbing shit
Yeah.
at the glove compartment.
He's like, let me just grab this right here.
so I'm turning like, wait, what's happening? Like, who is in the car with me? And unfortunately, it's a society that we live in today where he had to do that.
Yeah.
He has to be this person. So we can just go camping.
Where was I as the one? I was on the desk.
That was the other part of the story that made me a little nervous. So as I'm looking, I'm like, oh damn. So I'm like, all right, so Alberto's handling his business. Let me go face forward again. In the rearview mirror, I see Dennis, and then I see less of Dennis. As Dennis slowly
I didn't even know I was doing it. But I was definitely sinking to sleep.
He's like,
So when the-
less visible.
Yeah. So when the
What
cop
is it that
walked
they
away,
call that?
huh?
What is it that they call that in Get Out?
Oh, sinking into the floor?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was in the floorboards by the time.
Is it just the 2 of you? Yes, sir.
Yeah, now.
But I'm
man.
sure we all have stories like that. That happened to be our story that that happened to us simultaneously, and it was just the type of thing where it's like it's one of those things like where the current situation with George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, whose officers still have not been arrested. Those kind of things bring up these stories and those kind of situations where you feel like you just made it home, and also that that we all have these similar horrible kind of similar situations where you feel like you're just doing a normal thing. I wasn't going, I wasn't with 2 of my friends going to score, an 8 ball.
Right.
I was going camping, Pennsylvania.
And it's your constitutional right.
It's my constitution. Like, I had broken no rights as far as I understand. Right. I didn't need any sort of license that I didn't have. We weren't going to a place and breaking in. We had spoken to the renter. You know what I mean? Like we lined everything up.
Giving them money.
Hell, they had beds and I had a sleeping bag just to make sure. We were taking, and it's like these extra precautions we have to take. People don't realize that we take them because we have to. Right? We have to show that we're extra special, happy, good, go lucky, law-abiding, double law-abiding Negroes. We have to do that. Just to live, right? Just to live.
For us to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, we have to go above and beyond, just to get the bare minimum. Yeah, just like the gentleman you were talking about, the general.
He had to be the best at West Point, just to be
undeniably
an enlisted officer.
Right. So, but what I didn't mention, so when he went to West Point, his class was of 270, I believe, cadets. He graduated 35th. This is a man that wouldn't get any help from anybody else. He still graduated 35th. Just to let them know, I don't care what you do. Right. I'm here and I'm gonna succeed.
I'm doing the best that I can. You're gonna notice me.
And just in case some of you might need it, his name is a great name to put on one of those wonderful bases that have Confederate names. Get rid of it. There is an American hero that did it all himself.
Nice. I like that.
Hell yeah.
So I'll read my excerpt. It's not traditionally Juneteenth, but it is about racism.
I mean, I don't think anything we've read has really been like specifically for Juneteenth.
This is from the autobiography of Malcolm X, as told by Alex Healy, as told too. When I first read this book, it changed my life in a lot of ways. In the beginning, Malcolm is super radical, and it's worded in a way where you feel his disgust for the way the world is at this time. And yeah, exactly. Like, there's a lot of detail into it, but
Sorry. You tell him Malcolm X gets worked up.
Brother Malcolm X.
That's right. That's right. You tell him. Come here, Toby.
Her eyebrows going.
Alright.
How dare you get up? Well, I'm gonna go use the bathroom while the dog settles down. I gotta pee.
Take one.
I'll be back.
Do you want me to wait, Ari?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll wait. I'll take a sip. And this Guinness with cheese. I'm kind of wondering what cheese would go with it. So it would be strong.
Well, that's kind of creamy.
Right. Maybe like a Gouda?
Maybe something sharp.
Sharp cheddar?
Maybe.
Well, there we have the Parmesan Romano, because that's what the lady wanted. But because you shouldn't let me into a supermarket and not assume I'm going to buy things that I see,
what you
we
get?
also have some spicy cheese in there.
Ooh.
It said buffalo chicken cheese.
Whoa.
So.
You know, because how he means business, because he's like...
Yeah, he's like, yo, the spice.
Well, I get yelled at when I go to the supermarket and I come out with things I wasn't supposed to.
That's like her.
What is this?
Me, I'm a snack. What do I call myself? I was gonna say a snack eater, but I get super snacky. I like my sweets.
Okay.
So she'll be like, "Hey babe, can you go to the supermarket and get bread and eggs?" I come.
You don't bring one slice home.
I might forget the bread. I'll bring the eggs, but I got cupcakes. I got like some M&M peanuts, some Pop-Tarts, something for her that I'm not even sure she's gonna like. I'm like, I thought of you.
So here's the key. I've learned this. You make a list of what she wants first,
and that's the order you go by.
You get that first, and then you wander.
He's the sweets. I'm the salty. Bring me like a bag of popcorn and I'm happy.
Yeah.
What are you saying?
All your things.
That when I go to supermarkets, other things come home with me other than what is on the list.
They just jump into the bag.
For sure.
It's like, what was that movie with the food? The
Sausage
animation?
party?
Yeah, so they just jump into the bag, think they go into the promised land. Take it with you.
Come on,
Come on, Toby. I'm sorry. I
So
got
he's
up.
super radical in the beginning.
Yeah, he's super radical in the beginning. Life happens and he starts to become a little bit more humble. He sees the other side of how there can be a positive change without burning the country down. Which, whatever.
Some of which occurs, if I'm correct, after his trip to Mecca.
Yeah, exactly. And the passage that I'm reading is right after his trip to Mecca, so thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right.
brother in arms. Is white America really sorry for her crimes against the black people? Does white America have the capacity to repent and to atone? Does the capacity to repent, to atone, exist in the majority, in one half, and even 1/3 of American white society? Many black men, the victims, in fact most black men, would like to be able to forget the crimes. But most American white people seem not to have it in them to make any serious atonement to do justice to the black man. Indeed, how can white society atone for enslaving, for raping, for unmanning, for otherwise brutalizing millions of human beings for centuries? What atonement would the God of justice demand for the robbery of the black people's labor, their lives, their true identities, their culture, their history, and even their human dignity? A desegregated cup of coffee, a theater, public toilets, the whole range of hypocritical integration, these are not atonement. I talked with Afro-Americans and whites of many professions and backgrounds. An American white ambassador in one African country was Africa's most respected American ambassador. I'm glad to say that this was told to me by one ranking African leader. We talked for an entire afternoon. Based on what I heard of him, I had to believe him when he told me that as long as he was on the African continent, he never thought in terms of race, that he dealt with human beings, never noticing their color. He said he was more aware of language differences than of color differences. He said that only when he returned to America would he become aware of color differences. I told him, what you are telling me is that it isn't the American white man who is a racist, but it's the American political, economical, and social atmosphere that automatically nourishes a racist psychology in the white man. He agreed. We both agreed that American society makes it next to impossible for humans to meet in America and not be conscious of their color differences. And we both agreed that if racism could be removed, America could offer a society where rich and poor could truly live like human beings. The discussion with the ambassador gave me new insight, one which I like, that the white man is not inherently evil, but America's racist society influences him to act evilly. The society has produced and nourishes a psychology which brings out the lowest, most base part of human beings. And one thing I took from that, it's not plainly in there, but it kind of brings me to how we live in a capitalistic society where you're always trying to get over on somebody. And now when you have no history, you have no lineage, you have no culture, you're generally on the bottom. And in the society that we're in now, we're on the bottom and we're getting pushed to stay to the bottom. And then we're, by some, made to feel ashamed for being at the bottom, where they tell you, oh, pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Where you've been given this culture, you've been given this fortune to build your empire. We have nothing.
And some of us still, have done. Some of us, like Esteban's case, the journal, and you still have done it. Like, still have found boots that we didn't have.
Yeah, exactly. He crafted those boots.
Crafted the straps. Pulled them up on our own. Done our best in situations where we're not allowed to be there or not wanted to be wherever we are, even though we've earned the right to be there, and fought past any difficulties and hurdles they put us through. And still you're looked at as unworthy or undeserving. This shirt is a reminder of what George Floyd said before he passed. By his murder, I don't think of him as being, passing away like.
Right.
I don't know. He was screaming. He was crying for his mother. We've seen the video. Some of us have seen the video if you've chosen to.
Yeah.
Seeing that he was crying for his dead mother while a man was suffocating him with his hands in his pocket on the streets of his own city. So I wear this shirt, and the thing that shouldn't have happened, that did happen on my way here, is that I'm thinking, as I'm putting on this shirt, am I putting my life in danger? Is someone going to pull me over and be angered that I'm wearing this shirt and take whatever statement they think I'm making from it and will I make it? But I have to think in both ways. I have to think, this is a thing that might anger a person who might pull me over. But I also have to think that I have to make this statement. Mm-hmm. Because what kind of man am I if I don't wear a shirt like this to support the family of those he left behind, to support myself, Esteban, Anthony, you the ladies here.
I don't get a
If-
name.
I'm just saying it's not a male thing.
Yeah,
It's not a male person of color thing. It's an
Yeah.
all people of color
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
That we go through our lives making decisions on with other people in mind, even those who hate us. And I wear the shirt proudly. It was a gift given to me by my uncle. I don't know what he thought about giving it to me. I know he knows that I'm proud enough to wear this. That he raised a person that would wear this with pride. Who walks out into the street every day with dignity, with integrity, honesty, and intends to come home that same way. I'm sure George Floyd felt the same way. I didn't know the man. I never met him. We lived in 2 different cities, but I know that when I see other black men on the street, I don't have to cross the street because I'm afraid of them. Because I know they go through the same struggles as I do. I know they have the same intentions as I do, and that's to make it home.
And you mentioned the shirt, and I recently went on a 6-mile run with our friend Tobias, and he's black. And his shirt, he had the same shirt, I Can't Breathe, and he had a mask that said I Can't Breathe. And then he gave me this shirt as well. And I didn't wear it for the run because he had just made it, so the glue was still right. But I was thinking, I'm like, we're 2 black men running. Like, I can only imagine. He came to my neighborhood, so I'm like, I made the route, and I had to purposely make a route where there wasn't going to be that much police presence because he has a wife, he has a family. I don't know how I would be able to explain to her, listen, we went this way, there was these people here, they felt this type of way, and he didn't make it home. And I'm sorry I couldn't bring him home too. So it's like, there's levels to it. You know what I mean?
Just the fact that you had to make that consideration.
Yeah.
When all you were doing is exercising.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Exercising.
He's currently doing a run streak. What day are you on there? 27?
28.
28. Shit. Day 28. Good job, honey.
Thank you.
And every time he goes out for this run, I always ask him the same things. Do you have your ID? Do you have your keys? Are you carrying your multi-tool? Because he's usually carrying a multi-tool.
For work. Yeah.
For work. And I always have to check with him. All right, do you have your ID? You're a black man. You're going to be running outside in case you get stopped. Make sure you wear your running ID holder because it's a little bit more visible. You don't have to open anything or anything like that. And
The running wall.
these are the things that I have in my mind. And I didn't watch the George Floyd video.
I didn't.
I of all the videos I've seen, I think this was the one that I couldn't bring myself to do it. But
I watched it. And I understand why you didn't watch it. I assume you probably didn't watch the same reason she doesn't. A lot of times I have to...
Because they're not in the habit of watching snuff films?
Well, a lot of emotion passes through.
Oh, very much so. Yeah.
And sometimes watching the news, I feel like it's a masochistic thing. I'm like, this is going to piss me off. They're going to find a way. And speaking of watching the video, so today I don't know if it was today or yesterday, a statement was made by a certain bunker baby.
What the fuck is a bunker?
Oh, you
bunker
The
bitch.
45th president of the United
the
States.
Cheeto.
Oh!
The bunker baby.
There's so many nicknames. You can't keep up.
Bunker bitch, bunker boy, bunker baby, pick one.
When he was asked whether he watched the video, this jackass is like, I started to, but it was too long.
Oh, wow. I didn't hear that.
A lot of times I don't watch any of videos where he's talking about any of this.
Yeah, I tried to.
I try to watch a lot of independent media.
That's why I also said earlier, Black Joy is a form of resilience.
It
Because
definitely is.
if we continue to watch the same things of each other getting murdered, and the same, soup different bowl happening, we're not going to be able to handle it anymore. I think you need that break. You need that joy in order to continue.
But on the other